I've been using Davinci Resolve for about a year now, and for my last set of projects I decided to upgrade to version 16.2. This version is actually stable and usable when you start up a new project, unlike the beta or version 16.1, which runs so slow you can barely cut a couple clips together without pulling your hair out waiting for the GUI to respond. But sadly, even in version 16.2.4, once you get past a couple of minutes of quick cuts, voiceovers, and zooms, Davinci Resolve will suck up all the RAM your system has and start crashing. Well, I'm not afraid to discuss the shortcomings of a product I like, and I don't recommend using Resolve 16 just yet. It is a literal resource hog, and while it has a bunch of nice new features, I can't use it for any serious editing because of the constant crashes. Let me show you. This is what memory usage looks like on Davinci Resolve 15.3.1. And this is Resolve version 16. These are both the exact same project, so we can clearly see that version 16 uses a couple of gigs more RAM for the same edit. Because I have 24 gigs of RAM installed, this is not a huge deal. Unless I open a slightly larger project made entirely with version 16. But then the system memory settings don't do anything at all, an oversight that seems to have lasted throughout the entire version 16 development process so far. Even that isn't nearly as bad as when it crashes in the middle of loading a project, but pegs your CPU permanently with no warnings and then refuses to close and just keeps running in the background. Even if it doesn't crash and max out your CPU on closing, it can still crash on closing and not close out of memory. And now, let's say everything works the way it's supposed to, I assume, and it does clear out of memory. This is how long it takes for Resolve 15, and this is Resolve 16's most recent build, 16.2.4. Whenever you try to close Davinci Resolve 16 using normal methods, it'll continue to run in the background. It might slowly, very slowly, release all the memory it has sucked up, but then again it might just stay running and never release your system resources until you open Task Manager and manually end the process. There are a lot of fancy new features being added to version 16, but they're all worthless if I have to constantly manually end the process in Task Manager just to restart it again in the middle of working on a 20-minute project over and over and over again. All of these problems are why I've reverted to version 15.3, and I will be using this version for the time being. If you want to join me, make sure whatever project you're currently working on in version 16, finish that first, since version 16's database is not backwards compatible with version 15's, and nothing will load, and as far as I know, there are no converters. And here's how to find and download older versions of Resolve. Unfortunately, version 16 is the official version available on their website front page, but older versions can be found by scrolling to the bottom of the page and clicking the Support Center link. From here, click the link to the Davinci Resolve Fusion and BlackMagic eGPU section, and scroll down the left-hand column, the one marked Latest Downloads, until you find version 15.3.1. You can use any version here you want, but I've had good experiences with version 15.3.1 pictured here, and for those of you who don't want to go through all of that, I have a link directly to it in the description. You can just put whatever you want in the registration form. Maybe someday the marketing department will realize that trying to collect enough creepy personal information to guess your bank account password is probably the wrong direction to go, but for now, just put in junk if you want, and click the register and download button. I'm pretty sure you can figure out the rest without my help, but just in case this is your first time installing Davinci Resolve, the options for version 15 are: PostgreSQL is a database system best used if you're editing with other people on the same project using multiple computers. Panels are those fancy control panels the rich guys get to use to speed up editing. Unless you have one, uncheck this box. The Fairlight Audio Accelerator utility is a program to interface with their fancy sound card, same usage as panels, and the Fairlight Studio utility is configuration software for those fancy panels from earlier. Again, if you have it, use it, otherwise leave it unchecked. Someday they'll fix up 16 so it runs decently, and it has some fancy new features that make it very promising editing software, but I don't have the kind of system needed for buggy memory management, so I'll just stick with the version that works for me. For reference, I'm using an AMD FX 8350 CPU on a Sabertooth 990FX motherboard with 24 gigs of RAM and a GTX 1050 Ti video card running Windows 7. These are all older hardware, I know, but Resolve 15 works just fine, so I'll probably make an update when version 16.3 is released, and I'll definitely post something when a working version becomes available. For now, I hope this was informative and helpful if you're trying to decide which version to use, and I can't wait for the devs over at BlackMagic to put the finishing touches on version 16. There are definitely some useful features in the new one.